In 2017, Joe Rogan spent 3 uninterrupted hours letting a scientist walk through ancient civilizations, moving through archaeology, geology, and fringe theories without steering the conversation or rushing it. By 2024, he was reading Steven Crowder tweets about monkeypox to a former Navy SEAL, while his producer quietly corrected the information in real time. The biggest podcast in the world didn't collapse, it drifted.
Joe Rogan is a menace to our society and a threat to the fabric of our nation. Or maybe legacy media isn't exactly the voice of truth. For 5 years now, there's been a coordinated effort by the mainstream media to discredit Joe and every independent voice outside of their club.
Misinformation and making money off of it. Disinformation, I should say.
I think there's a lot of people that have a distorted perception of what I do.
Yeah, what if Joe Rogan didn't rise just because of who he is, but because of what the corrupt media failed to be?
Between 2015 and 2019, the Joe Rogan experience operated differently from almost anything else in media. Celebrity interviews elsewhere were short, scripted, and built around promotion.
Trump did like 100 million views on Joe Rogan's show.
I definitely regret that we didn't do it.
This was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time.
Dude, look at that. And what did he say?
Jason said I won him the election.
Are you the most powerful interviewer on the planet? Or are you the most powerful interview that the planet has ever seen?
Stream by day, Joe Rogan podcast by night, all day.
Late-night shows functioned as marketing stops. Rogan's format wasn't polished or controlled. It was long, open-ended, and unpredictable. One episode might feature a physicist breaking down quantum mechanics. Another might focus on wildlife conservation. Another would center on a comedian talking through the craft of stand-up. Rogan was recording conversations he wanted to have, not trying to build a media empire. Guests were allowed to finish their thoughts without being redirected toward talking points. People listened because it felt unscripted, like overhearing a real conversation rather than watching a performance. The audience grew quickly. By 2019, episodes regularly reached millions. Books spiked in sales after appearances. A single conversation could reshape someone's public profile overnight. In 2020, Spotify paid Joe Rogan over $200 million to bring the podcast exclusively to their platform.
Look, Joe, more news out this morning, Julie. Really in-depth report out of the New York Times on Joe Rogan. His overall contract value might be $200 million.
According to the New York Times, the 3.5-year deal is worth at least $200 million, with a possibility of additional payments.
The number was unprecedented. It pushed podcasting into mainstream headlines and redefined what a single creator could be worth. Soon after, Rogan moved from Los Angeles to Austin, citing California's political climate and pandemic restrictions. He built a new studio and opened a comedy venue called the Comedy Mothership.
I love Rogan. I love the club. I think it's perfect, and I don't know what you're talking about.
I have no idea, and every time I go there, I feel joy in my heart.
You fucking
only club that when they go.
The format stayed the same. Long conversations without commercial breaks, but the guest list began to change. Instead of the wide range of voices that once defined the show, familiar figures started appearing more often. Comedians from Rogan's inner circle returned repeatedly. Political commentators with overlapping views became regulars. The conversations began circling the same topics and arriving at the same conclusions. The move to Austin didn't just change Rogan's address, it changed how the podcast functioned. Los Angeles is a transit hub where actors, musicians, scientists, and academics regularly pass through as part of existing schedules. Podcast appearances fit naturally into that flow. Austin doesn't operate that way. Guests now had to be touring, performing at Rogan's club, or traveling specifically to appear. The guest pool got narrower. More episodes featured people Rogan already knew well. Fewer introduced unfamiliar perspectives. Comedians like Tony Hinchcliffe, Brendan Schaub, and Bert Kreischer appeared more frequently. The local comedy scene began forming around Rogan's orbit, with performers relocating in hopes of landing stage time or a podcast appearance. The show that once felt outward-looking began to feel contained. For years, Rogan described himself as socially liberal and economically pragmatic. He supported Bernie Sanders, spoke positively about universal basic income, and criticized corporate power. During the pandemic, that framing shifted. Rogan became more vocal about lockdowns, vaccine mandates, and public health messaging. Those concerns weren't unique. Many people shared them, but the way they were handled on the show changed. Guests who agreed with Rogan often received long, unchallenged conversations, while those who disagreed faced more resistance. The ivermectin controversy accelerated the shift. After CNN criticized Rogan's discussion of the drug, he invited Sanjay Gupta onto the podcast to address the coverage directly. After that, Rogan positioned himself more clearly against mainstream media. Political commentators appeared more frequently. Conversations centered increasingly on culture war topics. The show still called itself open-minded, even as fewer different perspectives appeared. Clips began circulating that longtime listeners didn't recognize. Theo Von makes a sarcastic remark. Rogan responds seriously, missing the joke and draining the moment. Rogan replies to parody Twitter accounts, mistaking them for real ones, then deletes the posts after being corrected. Stories pulled from social media come up during episodes and get fact-checked in real time by his producer, revealing inaccuracies mid-conversation. Louis C.K. appears and lightly mocks Rogan's fixation on saunas and cold plunges, pointing out how disconnected those concerns are from most people's lives. Rogan defends them instead of recognizing the critique. The host, who built his reputation on skepticism, increasingly struggles to apply it consistently. The comedy mothership was introduced as Rogan's tribute to stand-up comedy. The venue ended up featuring mostly comedians from his immediate circle. Personal relationships mattered more than finding new talent. A podcast ecosystem formed around proximity. Comedians appeared on each other's shows to cross-promote, talking about stand-up more than refining it. In 2024, Rogan released a special titled Burn the Boats. Clips circulated widely, drawing criticism and mockery. The response didn't noticeably alter how Rogan discussed his place in comedy. As the guest list narrowed, more powerful figures entered the orbit. Billionaire Peter Thiel appeared on the podcast multiple times. When Theo Von brought up Palantir's surveillance contracts and work in conflict zones, Rogan changed subjects within minutes. Government-connected figures appeared for discussions that avoided deeper scrutiny. Listeners began noticing a pattern. Rogan questioned institutional power less aggressively, while challenging outsiders more often. The podcast that once positioned itself as independent increasingly sounded aligned. On the surface, the Joe Rogan experience hasn't changed. What changed was everything around it. The guest list narrowed, the conversations became more predictable, and the curiosity became selective. Rogan still talks about the show the same way he always has. Longtime listeners don't hear the same thing anymore. The shift was quieter than any dramatic collapse. Rogan didn't lose his platform or his audience. He just stopped being the same person at the center of it. What remains looks like what the podcast used to be, but feels different to the people who were there from the beginning, and the change continues, while the show moves forward using the same language it always has.